This will be the first in two video lectures in which I discuss the full range leadership model. First, I'd like to provide some definitions. In the previous lecture in which we discussed leader-member exchange, we discussed transactional leadership, and that is a form of leadership that, as the name implies, involves an exchange between a leader and a follower. Typically, the follower provides good performance. The leader provides, in exchange for that, a reward. Also, the converse can be true. Poor performance can result in the exchange of punishment or perhaps negative reinforcement on the part of the leader. There's a form of leadership we call transformational leadership. As the name implies, that involves change. And it involves change for both the leader and the follower. And in that, the leader engages through a connection with the follower and increasing the motivation and level of ethical or moral conduct for both the leader and the follower. Finally, there's what we call pseudo-transformational. That is where a leader essentially attempts to fake transformational leadership simply to meet the leader's wants and or needs. This figure depicts the full range of leadership model. In this first video lecture, we will discuss transactional leadership, which consists of laissez-faire, management by exception, and contingent reward types of leader behaviors. And in the second video lecture, we'll discuss transformational leadership, which is individualized consideration, intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation, and idealized influence. As the chart here depicts, the more transformational the form of leadership, the more effective it is. Also, the more active it is. The less active and the less effective leadership behaviors tend to be at the lower end of the transactional styles of leadership here. Transactional leadership, again, consists of laissez-faire, management by exceptions passive, management by exception active, and contingent reward. And I will discuss each of these in the next few slides in more detail. Laissez-faire leadership is an absence of leadership. The leader avoids taking a stand on issues. The leader doesn't emphasize results. It simply only becomes involved if absolutely necessary. And even then typically is unwilling to make a decision, and again refrains from intervening when issues arise, and typically is unaware of employee performance. If you're unaware and absent from the leadership equation, then obviously you're not going to have much influence on events, or at least an active form of influence. There is a form of leadership called management by exception passive, and essentially that is where a leader puts out fires. Now, by management by exception, we typically mean problems. When something crops up contrary to policy, procedure, SOP, or a problem develops a complaint about performance or some outcome, then the leader will react by putting out the fires. But again, in this, it's passive in that the leader waits for the problem to arise and typically only stresses what people do wrong, because the only time the leader pays attention to anything is when things go poorly. Typically, the response of the leader is just simply to enforce rules, find out who's to blame, punish them, and move on from there. Again, the leader typically dislikes challenges to the status quo. And again, we only hear from this type of leader when something goes wrong. and then only when it goes wrong enough that the leader believes that he or she must take some action in order to prevent harm to the leader. There is management by exception active, and again, that's where the focus is primarily on things that aren't working well. But in that case, the leader actively seeks out when things aren't working well. Typically, leaders in those conditions emphasize standards. They're the leaders who are constantly in the inspection mode. They're continually assessing performance simply from the perspective of standards, rules, regulations, SOPs, things of that nature. And again, actively looks for mistakes or rule violations. But again, the focus of the leader, although active, is simply on those things that aren't going well or that are perhaps contrary to rules and regulations. Typically, the leader takes corrective action, again, usually MTC, in the form of punishment or perhaps negative reinforcement. There is a form of contingent reward, and again, this is a more constructive exchange in that the leader seeks out good behavior. For good behavior, the leader will provide some sort of reward. The leader typically accepts or establishes clear expectations about what the leader expects in terms of outcomes and what rewards will be provided should those outcomes be achieved. And these exchanges, again, are a recognition of or provided for accomplishing the mission as the leader defines it. And I will, in the next video lecture, move on to discuss transformational leadership.